So it's been almost 2 weeks since Sonic Frontiers came out, and I haven't really made a video where I just give my thoughts on the game yet, so this is that video. And I just 100% completed the game. I pretty much did everything the game has to offer, even like doing things that are not required to get the Platinum Trophy. Like, I did all the fishing stuff, I collected every egg memo, I bought everything from the fishing shop, even completed all the fishing spots, right? I also went out and cleared the maps and, collected all the memory tokens and that sort of thing, and completed every mission for every cyberspace level. So I think it's safe to say that I've done pretty much everything the game has to offer, because there's really nothing else I can think of to do in the game. And what did I think of it? I mean, I thought it was great, really. There's not really any other way to slice it. I'm not saying it's the most perfect Sonic game ever, because there's definitely some things wrong with it, and there's definitely room for improvement, but I liked it. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. So in this video, I'm just going to be giving my general thoughts on it. This isn't necessarily a scripted video by any means. I'm just going to kind of going off my brain here, just giving my thoughts out there, that kind of thing. Also, I'm not going to really be getting into spoilers in this video. I'm actually scripting an actual, in-depth Frontiers review right now, which will come out later down the line, and that's going to get into everything the game has in detail, and that's going to, talk about spoilers and all that good stuff. So yeah, this is just this video getting my general thoughts out, and yeah, that's pretty much it, so let's get into it. So yeah, I mean, I like Sonic Frontiers. I think it's a good game. I'll give it a solid 8 out of 10, I think. There's definitely some problems with it, and what really caught me off guard mainly when I first started playing the game was how Sonic controlled. I mean, it's really fluid, and it's really smooth to control him, unlike the other previous Boost 3D Sonic games where he felt kind of stiff to control. This one felt really different, and it was a really pleasant surprise. But I think the control scheme in Sonic Frontiers works best in the open world portion of the game, because when we get into the cyberspace stuff and you try to control Sonic in cyberspace, it just feels so off because his speed is slowed down to like a freaking snail. It's so bad in cyberspace, but we'll get into that later when I talk about cyberspace and that kind of thing. So I think Sonic controls really well in this game. A little slow at first, like really slow at first, until you upgrade your speed more and more, and that makes you go faster. And speaking of speed, you can't really go fast at all without holding down the boost button all the time. I mean, the boost button pretty much acts as a run button, I guess, kind of like Sonic Lost World, if you ask me. If you don't, if you don't hold the boost button, you're literally going so slow, it might as well just not even be a Sonic game. It's really slow. So holding down the boost button throughout the whole game is pretty much how you play it, and that's fine. I mean, Lost World did the same thing, and it was fine there. But I don't know, it's just weird that they call it the boost and not just the run button, but hey, whatever, man. And like I was saying before, it feels really weird in cyberspace, because usually in other 3D Sonic games, boosting, you can boost through enemies and all that stuff. Like, you can just boost through everything and it's really fun. But in Sonic Frontiers, as it's just used as a run button, you can't boost through enemies, and you can't really boost through any of the obstacles like boxes or anything. Instead, you have to homing attack the enemies and then, yeah, continue on. And speaking of cyberspace, it was really kind of, I don't really know how to describe it, but I thought it was going to be a way bigger part of the game than what it actually was. I spent around 27 hours in total 100%ing the game, and I probably was only in cyberspace for maybe 1 or 2 hours of that playtime. I just thought cyberspace was going to be a way bigger part of Frontiers, and that's not saying there's not a lot of cyberspace. There's a ton of cyberspace levels in the game. It's just they're all very short, and I don't know, they were just kind of forgettable if you ask me, except for the last island's cyberspace levels. Those were pretty fun. But yeah, cyberspace was kind of a disappointment, and I wasn't really expecting too much from it, but I don't know, man. I was just really expecting it to be more than what it actually turned out to be. But I guess it's kind of like a fun break from the open world gameplay if you just kind of want to take a break and go play some cyberspace. I can see that, but I have no clue why they made it required for the story, because it's just such a pace breaker, man. I mean, I found them fun, for like the first run through, and then when I had to go back and do the other missions, it was just a chore because I just did not want to play it anymore because the cyberspace levels were so forgettable. And that's not just because they reused assets or whatever from previous Sonic games. It's because they all look the same, really. There's only 4 environments throughout the whole game. You have the city, you have Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary. And for some reason, they decided to put all the city levels in Oranos Island, which is the 4th island. So I don't know what that's about, but they decided to just put all the good stuff at the end, I guess. I mean, whatever. But I don't know, man. Cyberspace just kind of fell short for me. And Sonic just feels so weird to control in Cyberspace, because when I'm playing it, I think it's like a normal Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Generations boost game. But it's really noticeable in the 2D sections of the Cyberspace levels. Sonic is so freaking slow, but I mean, that's really my only complaint with Cyberspace. Otherwise, it's just kind of a fun little extra mode, but I don't know. It's not the main part of Frontier, so I'm fine with that. If the game was just Cyberspace, then it would be awful, but no. The open zone, actually, I had a lot of fun with. From the start, you would look at it and you'd be like, wow, this is just assets just randomly placed everywhere for Sonic to go run on. Like, there's rails and platforms all over the place. Yeah, I know it could seem like that, but it really, like, I know why they're calling this open zone instead of open world, because it's not necessarily open world as in you have different objectives to do throughout the world. It's literally just go talk to whatever character you're saving and go get the Chaos Emeralds. That's the only objectives you get, pretty much, to progress the story. And sometimes they'll throw something else at you, like a mission or just, you know, something like that, but most of the time the objectives are just the same thing over and over again, and I don't think that's really what an open world game is. It's more like Mario Odyssey, you know, where you have to go around and just collect the moons and that's it. It's a lot more like that than like Breath of the Wild, where you have to go to this place, talk to this person, and then go fight the Divine Beast or whatever. It's completely different stuff, but yeah. As far as the rails and all that stuff go, just kind of floating in the sky, they're actually placed strategically, so when you get off of one, you kind of go to the next one and collect more memory tokens, because that's how you collect them in the game. So when you do that, like, let's just say you're on a rail, for example, and you collect a memory token, like a rainbow ring or a booster or something like that will send you to the next area where you can just go more. So the pace is, like, never broken in the open world. And in my opinion, that's pretty good level design. But my main issue with the open world is that, well, okay, here's the thing. There's 3, I'm not going to spoil anything here, I'm not trying to spoil anything here, but the game advertises 5 islands, but there's really only 4, really. And actually, now that I think about it, there's really only 3, but they split the first island up into 3 islands just to extend the playtime, I guess. Because in the original footage of Frontiers, we actually see the 4th island, and it was like, yeah, this was originally part of the first island. But that's besides the point. What I'm saying here is there's only 3 islands basically you visit, which is fine. You know, each island is like 3 to 4 hours long if you're playing casually, like I did. If you speed through it all, you could probably beat each one in like 30 minutes. But for me, when I was just like, you know, taking my time, you know, collecting some memory tokens, you know, going to the cyberspace levels as I went. Each island was around 3 to 4 hours long, and it was cool, you know? But as I got, like, through the game, things started to go progressively downhill, and it really started to go downhill after the 3rd island, because the game just kind of fell apart then. Now, I'm not going to talk about the final boss or anything, but, because, you know, spoilers and all that. But it was bad. It was not fun, the final boss of the game that you had to play the game on hard mode for. And even the the actual final boss that you can play on any mode is not even that great compared to the other bosses. Speaking of bosses, I won't show any of them here because I'm just going to be showing footage from trailers and stuff just in case if you guys don't want to see like actual gameplay footage that hasn't been shown officially. But there's like these mini bosses throughout the worlds, and I'll talk about the combat in a second. But there's mini bosses throughout the worlds, and then there's these giant Titan bosses that you fight as Supersonic. Now, the mini bosses throughout the worlds are, I mean, they're fun. Most of them are. Some of them are like just, okay, these might as well have just been normal enemies, but some of them are pretty fun, and the music is pretty good for them. But my favorite part of Frontiers had to have been the Titan bosses where you turn into Supersonic for. I'm not going to talk about them too much just to not spoil it, but just know that the music is fantastic, and the gameplay in those boss fights is just probably the best thing Sonic has ever put out. It was just great, man. I mean, that's literally I don't understand like why the final boss wasn't something like that, but oh well, man. But yeah, those were definitely my favorite parts of the game, were the supersonic bosses, and those will probably be pretty much everybody's favorite part of the game, because I know they're only like, what, 3-4 minutes a piece, but they're unforgettable, man. That's all I'm saying. But otherwise, the open zone stuff is pretty fun. Combat was a main part of Frontier's marketing, and I think it's good, don't get me wrong, but once you start unlocking more and more moves, it literally just becomes hold down this button to defeat the enemy, because some of the moves you can unlock on the skill tree are so incredibly broken. And the whole skill tree thing doesn't take that long to fill up anyway. It was kind of pointless if you ask me. But it was still cool that it's there. But just the moves you unlock as Sonic, it just broke. Like, this is too much. Too much. Like, the final move you unlock basically can kill anything in one shot. Like, that's how bad it gets. That's how broken it gets, really. But it's still fun. The moves Sonic can use look really flashy, and they look cool and that kind of thing. Really putting more expression into Sonic's character than, like, Forces or Lost World or anything like that. Speaking of, like, characters and stuff, though, the story in the game, I'm not going to spoil the story or whatever, because it was just, what? Like, I'm still confused, but I was so caught off guard, because I knew the story was going to be more serious, like Sonic Unleashed and Sonic 06, instead of, you know, Sonic Forces and Lost World. But this was a complete 180. This was not even, I think the story was even more complex than Unleashed, if you ask me. But yeah, there was like lore and everything, and they referenced previous Sonic games so much, it caught me off guard. And not just the story, but like the writing too. Every character actually has solid character development in this game, and it was just so weird to see, and the voice acting really helps that too, because everybody has such a serious tone in this game. It really surprised me, but it makes me happy, because at least knowing that they're taking Sonic stories seriously again just puts a smile on my face. But yeah, that was the story. I'm not going to get into the ending or anything, but it was okay if you ask me. I'm just not going to describe in detail, because you need to play it for yourself. But yeah, otherwise, there's other stuff in the game too, you know. For each map, there's these little puzzles throughout the map, and you have to, you know, do very simple tasks to open more of the map. These could just be running through a little short speedrun section, or completing these, like, tile puzzles as we saw in the first gameplay showcase by IGN. You have to hit balls into hoops. There's just a bunch of, like, little side missions you can do like that, and they're okay, I guess, but I think they could have been a little better, a little more Sonic-y, I guess you could say. But they're still okay. I mean, they're passable. Another thing that I really liked is that in each island there's one cyberspace portal that takes you to a fishing minigame with Big the Cat. And this is really how you get to level up your stats a lot, because fishing gives you tokens, and you use the tokens to buy seeds of defense and skill where you can give them to the Cocos to level you up. And yeah, this is basically how you level up in this game. You can also find Cocos and seeds in the overworld, but it takes forever, and you have to grind the game out. But fishing is really, it's fun though. I mean, it's very simple. I mean, there's nice lo-fi music going on in the background while you're doing it. It's just a nice relaxing break from the open zone. It's really easy though. There's not really any strategy to it. It's definitely not a headache like Sonic Adventures fishing, that's for sure. It's way easier than that. I think it was just a cool thing though to add, because, you know, Big the Cat is back in a mainline Sonic game for the first time since Heroes. I mean, I think it was Heroes. But yeah, I think the fishing minigame was pretty cool. But throughout the whole game, really, I think the soundtrack is... Listen, I wasn't a huge fan of the Forces soundtrack. There was a few good tracks thrown in there, but Frontier's soundtrack is just consistently good from start to finish. It's amazing. I feel like the synth kind of style they were going with in Forces was perfected here with some of the boss fights and the cyberspace levels. But my main issue with the Forces soundtrack was that it all sounded so, like, annoying almost. It was all the synth, and it was just, this is awful, man. But in Frontiers, there's a ton of variety, like in Unleashed, like when you're in Kronos Island, the first island, there's piano and stuff, and then the second island is Ares Island. That's like a completely different style of music. And then when you get to the Titan boss fights, it's like heavy emo rock in your, like, just blasting in your ears with like yelling and all that, and it just the soundtrack is all over the place really, and it's really great because it reminds me of like Unleashed, where that game had multiple different music genres mashed into one soundtrack, and I really missed that when it came to Sonic, because it hasn't been like that since Colors, I guess, because I know Colors was like really stuck to one theme when it came to the soundtrack, but it had the variety there. But I think this is one of the best Sonic soundtracks in Frontiers, because there's just so much variety. And the Cyberspace levels too, I forgot about that. But the Cyberspace levels have like the DJ, like hype music, and like the EDM, that kind of thing. And it's great. It's really great. And I just think whoever worked on the soundtrack, whether that would be Tomoyo Otani or like anybody else involved in this game soundtrack, did an amazing job. And I mean, this is again probably one of the best Sonic soundtracks in the entire series, if you ask me. But yeah, it's such a huge improvement from Forces. It's really amazing. But yeah, kudos to all of you people who worked on the Frontier soundtrack, because it's one of the best in the entire series. But I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say about Frontiers. There's some other things I could talk about, but I'm going to save a lot of this stuff for like the bigger video I'm going to put out. This was just kind of a rant video, not really scripted or anything, so sorry if there was like stuttering and stuff. But I'm not really going to edit this video that much. I'm just going to put some trailers in the background, because again, I really just wanted to get my thoughts out there on this game, because I think it's a very good game, and I definitely recommend it to both Sonic fans and just people who are trying to get into Sonic in general. Do I think it's perfect? No, there's issues with technical issues like pop-in and, you know, frame rate on some consoles. There's a lot of issues, but I think it's a step in the right direction nonetheless, and I think it's a good Sonic game, so I'm glad that Sonic is finally good again. It feels so good to say that, man. But with that being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think about Sonic Frontiers in the comment section down below, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.